taking three.
Going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah.
Action station.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course. And today we are going to take a look at a battle in the Konigsberg. Yes, this replay was submitted by Ahead. And keep in mind, anyone out there who is watching and who has a replay, who wants it featured on the channel, just be sure to send the replay and screenshots to the email in the video description below. I'll be sure to get it up on the channel, or at least do my best to get it up on the channel. Anyway, we are in the Konigsberg. Now, we've talked about the Konigsberg quite a bit, right? Because I kept my Nuremberg, and we've seen a few Nuremberg battles, and I'm always comparing the Nuremberg to the Konigsberg, saying how they're so similar and, you know, basically bitchin' ships, because I really, really love them. I didn't keep my Konigsberg. Now, the reason why I didn't keep my Konigsberg is because, if you recall, when they first introduced the German cruiser and Russian destroyer line, excuse me, they gave, I think it was like you get 4 kills in a certain ship, and then you would get to, you'd get your Konigsberg. Same thing with the Russians, you do get 4 kills with some ship and you get a Russian destroyer. And then you got to test it out. So I did that, tested out the Konigsberg, and that's why I didn't actually keep the Konigsberg, I guess. Well, I mean, once the German cruisers came out, I then just basically free XP'd my way to the Nuremberg and then grinded from the Nuremberg onwards. And that's why I didn't have the Konigsberg, because I already played the Konigsberg and I didn't want to have to grind through it, as opposed to just, you know, sailing past it and getting into the Nuremberg. But anyway, Konigsberg is amazing. Biggest difference between the Konigsberg and the Nuremberg obviously is just, you know, the overall size of the ship. Basically the same amount of armor, but there is the rear turrets, right? The rear turrets on the Konigsberg are off center of each other. Now, the reason for this is the Germans wanted to give those rear turrets the maximum possible firing arc, right? So by having them off center like that, it apparently increases the firing arc of the turrets. And I mean, we definitely can see that as well, right? Because there are definitely instances in the Konigsberg, we'll see them in this replay as well, where the bow turret and the second turret on the aft, we'll call it the turret closest to midships, right? It actually gets into a position where it can fire into enemy ships, whereas, you know, the turret on the right on the end there, that last turret, that can't necessarily get into that arc. So it does definitely work out in giving you some better options here with your firing arcs on the Konigsberg, which is always nice, because with the limited amount of armor that the Konigsberg has, you really do want to limit the amount of broadsides that you're presenting to enemies, and as well, just kind of try to limit the amount of shells that you take, right? Because it doesn't take a whole lot to actually citadel a Konigsberg, and it's not going to take very long for the Konigsberg to sink. One of the really nice things, though, that I do like about the Konigsberg and Nuremberg as well is the rate of fire, right? You can see Budahead's lining up a shot now on an opposing Konigsberg. Shots are out. Before those shots even land, Budahead is already reloaded and ready to fire another salvo, right? This is what I really enjoy about the Konigsberg Nuremberg, is this rate of fire. It's spectacular. And then to add to that, you have these amazing guns, right? They may not be the highest caliber guns, but with armor piercing loaded in there, they have some great penetration values and can do a whole lot of damage very, very quickly. You'll notice as well here that we are on Straight, right? Now, Puda had mentioned that Straight is one of his favorite maps to play in the tier 3 to tier 5 range, and I would fully agree. It may not be my favorite map in that tier range, but it is definitely up there, right, for me. I think this is a great map, and what makes it so great for me anyway, you know, my reason why I like it so much is the fact that when you spawn, it splits your team in two, and I know a lot of people don't enjoy that. They don't really like that, and because, you know, they want to be all together. Why I like it so much is that it really does force teamwork, right? You really do have to work with a team. If you start in the north, you need to work with your northern team to, depending on the type of map that's going on, right? To either defend your cap or to cap the A point in this instance. And then same thing down there in the south. The south has to work as a team in order to actually either push into the enemy base or cap that C point, which the allies down there are currently doing. So that's why I really enjoy the map. Now, that being said, it can really play to a disadvantage, I suppose, or at least get people frustrated, myself included, in that when you spawn on this map, and say in this instance it's not going to happen, but just say in this instance the southern allies down there in the south didn't pull their own weight, right? They didn't actually, they all died, and for example, and they lost that C point. Well, that can be a little frustrating, because then it forces the northern point in this example, the northern force, it forces them to split and take the B point. Hopefully you'd have a destroyer up here in the north with you who's still alive, would be able to go down there and take that B point, but it does put a bit of pressure on the north when that happens, and vice versa, obviously, if it's happening in the south, right? So I can see a little bit of frustration around that, but I mean, it is a team game, right? Teamwork is highly necessary. So that's sort of why I really enjoy this map straight, because it forces teamwork upon people, especially those who may not necessarily want to play as a team. And I don't understand why you wouldn't want to, considering, you know, that's what the game is all about. But anyway, Pudahead gets his first kill, right? Took out the Karlsruhe. When I was watching the replay through, it brought up the same question that I've been asking myself for a little while as well. What do I shoot at a Karlsruhe? What, am I supposed to fire armor piercing? Am I supposed to fire high explosive? What I found is when I fire high explosive, it does good damage, decent damage, but definitely not as much as the armor piercing. Now, when you fire armor piercing at the Karlsruhe, 9 times out of 10, I find that you over-penetrate, and we saw that a little bit there with Pudahead as well when he was engaging the Karlsruhe, but in Pudahead's case here, he kept at it with the armor piercing and did manage to get a Citadel to finish him off. So I'm still on the fence as to what I should be firing when I come across a Karlsruhe. It doesn't happen often, though. I mean, the Karlsruhe is really a piece of crap. I'm always surprised when I see one in battle, and that usually as well is attributing to why I don't know, or why I don't know what to shoot at it, because I don't come across it very often. Anyway, the Wyoming off in the distance is now gone. We don't have to worry about him, so fantastic. And you can see the Pudahead's team here has the A and C cap point, right? B is still not taken, it's not even being capped by anyone right now, but you can also see that Pudahead's team here is really doing a good job, right? The enemies don't have a whole lot of options at this point in time, other than getting in there and capping B to at least slow down the cap points, which they never actually do. In fact, one of Pudahead's allied cruisers is now moving into B to start capping it, so fantastic. Now, we still do have that Konigsberg off in the distance, and that sort of plays into the next point of the Konigsberg and Nuremberg. They are fairly maneuverable ships. It's fairly easy to maneuver around the battlefield or the ocean, or whatever you want to call it here, and avoid incoming shots, right? Fairly easy to do because you are just so maneuverable. Now, on top of that, the Konigsberg and Nuremberg both have excellent ranges. So if you use your maneuverability and your range to your advantage, you can really limit the amount of shots that you're going to actually end up taking from the enemy. By turn, or in turn, keep yourself alive longer, and hopefully as well dish out more damage, right? Because these ships have a really high potential for damage. I know that they're only at the tier 5 and tier 6 mark, but they have an incredible amount of potential to dish out damage, right? We will see that shortly in the replay as well. We do have an enemy destroyer popping up, and we switch over to high explosive fire at the destroyer, which is a sound move, right? Obviously you're going to want high explosive on the destroyer. I mean, keep in mind, destroyers do not have citadels, so firing armor piercing at a destroyer, if you're in a battleship, right, and you get a bunch of hits, you're probably going to end up taking out that destroyer. But in a cruiser, mostly it's going to be over penetration. Now, I did a bit of experimenting when the German cruisers first came out, right? You might recall some of those videos where I was firing armor piercing at destroyers and thinking that it was doing pretty damn good. Well, obviously continue along the experimentation here, and come to find out that I was just getting fairly lucky with those hits on the destroyers. It's not consistent damage when you're firing armor piercing with the Konigsberg and Nuremberg at destroyers, right? You really want to switch over to your high explosive and do some critical damage to those destroyers and get them gone a little quicker than what you could with your armor piercing. Because basically the armor piercing has two possibilities. One is that it's going to over-penetrate the destroyer and not do a whole lot of damage. Second possibility is that it's going to do a bit of damage to the destroyer there, comparable to, or maybe a little more than your high explosive salvo would do. Now, that being said, you have those two extremes. When you fire high explosive at at a destroyer, right, you basically are guaranteed, as long as you hit the destroyer, you're guaranteed a certain amount of damage and the possibility of doing critical damage. So yeah, I definitely would suggest high explosive. Now we're facing off against the enemy Konigsberg that basically been fighting this entire time. The allies on Putahead's team here have capped all 3 bases now, so fantastic. There's not going to be a whole lot the enemies can do right now, especially considering they only have 3 ships, right? 2 battleships in the south, and then we've got this Konigsberg up here in the north. And Putahead is going to make some quick work of this Konigsberg, right? So when an enemy ship, when you're in a position like this, an enemy ship is broadside to you, fairly close on, you want armor piercing, and you want to pump the armor piercing into the enemy. Now the shell velocity on these German cruisers is pretty fast, so you don't necessarily have to lead your target as much, especially when they're this close to you, 6 kilometers or under. All you need to do is just continue to pump shells into the enemy cruiser. Ideally as well, you're going to be taking some defensive maneuvers in order to avoid any incoming shells, or at least limit the amount of broadside you're presenting to the enemy ship when you're brawling it out like that. And that was a pretty good example as well, especially considering 2 Konigsbergs facing off, and you can really see the advantage that the Konigsberg has over itself when the player is prepared for that maneuver, right, like Putahead was. So we do have another enemy battleship off in the distance here. We can see a Miyogi over there as well. Now that Miyogi is on fire and is quickly going to die. You can see Putahead put some shots off, but yeah, he's dead, doesn't matter. One last enemy battleship remaining, and then we will have victory. So this battleship here is quite a distance away, and we notice the his base coming straight on at us, right? His angle isn't good. So yeah, high explosive is going to be what you're going to want to fire in that situation. You can see Putahead did clear his barrels of the armor piercing and got some hits and did a bit of damage there, but your high explosive in this situation, or rather the situation where the enemy battleship is bow onto you, high explosive is definitely the way you want to go. Now in this situation where the enemy Wyoming is now presenting us a nice broadside, excellent opportunity to start putting armor piercing shots into this guy. And you can see that as Putahead gets closer here, he is going to be switching over to some armor piercing. And there's nothing wrong with firing a few salvos of high explosive, setting the target on fire, and then switching over to armor piercing. Or conversely, what I really like doing when I'm grouped up with a bunch of cruisers, for example, one cruiser is going to be firing high explosive, the other one is going to fire armor piercing, so that way you're always keeping the target on fire and doing significant AP damage as well. So, benefit there as well. Anyway, we can see Putahead has switched over to his armor piercing, and look at the damage that he's doing to this enemy Wyoming here. Now, sure, it's a tier 4 battleship, but still, right? It's a great cruiser with excellent armor piercing ability, right? So battle is over, victory is Putahead's, and we will take a look at the overall results here. So we can see victory, 3 kills, 2 citadels, 267,000 credits, 7,300 experience, so fantastic job there. Number of fires, we got some base defense points as well, and 114 hits. Now top of the team overall, obviously, with a bit of a lead, right, on everyone else. And you can see again, this really drives home the point that it doesn't matter necessarily how many kills you have. Sure, Putahead has 3 kills, but it was the damage that Putahead did, right? So we've got, what is that, 58,000, we'll say, maybe a little more, maybe 59, 60,000, but still good damage at the tier 5 mark. And the Konigsberg, right? Nothing wrong with this at all. And then obviously at the end of the day walks away with 252,000 credits and 7,300 experience. Now that of course was looks like times 3, so obviously, or times 3.5. So obviously there is a bonus and flags at play here as well, but still. Excellent job there by Putahead, and thank you for sending in the replay as well. And again, if you guys have any replays you want to send in, be sure to send them in, Thotgor1@gmail.com, and that is also in the video description below. So that is just about going to do it for us today in this video. As always, leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those, responding back to them. Hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber, and as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.